Hello, this is Deb Kielmeyer. I'm a board-certified psychiatrist. Welcome back to my channel. So today I'm going to be doing a follow-up to my last video on the Amber versus Johnny case, where I specifically watched Amber's interview on Dateline and reacted live to the video. So before I get to that, just a reminder that if you haven't done so, to like this video, subscribe to my channel, and turn on notifications. So essentially, when I did my last video where I did the live recap, watching Amber's interview on Dateline for the first time, and I was recording my reactions to it. So because I did it that way, I missed out on the fact that Dateline had cut out essentially huge chunks of the interview that were in the clips and the previews that were used to, ramp up excitement for the interview, and they essentially cut these chunks out. And what we saw was not actually everything Amber said. Surprise, surprise. So part of the reason I missed out on this was because I was purposely avoiding any clips of the interview ahead of time so that I could have a genuine reaction on camera. That being said, I now want to take the time to go back and react to the parts that I missed out on by just watching the Dateline interview. But before I get to that, I have some exciting news. So last week, I was visiting one of my very best friends in LA, and somehow I'd missed out on this, but she knows Amber Heard, and she had told me this during the trial, but it was in a group chat that gets inundated with messages, and I must have missed it. So I was like, please tell me more about this. So the background, the friend is a few years older than Amber and had someone who was very close to them who auditioned for a lot of the same roles as Amber, essentially looked very similar. And she would drive this individual to their auditions. And Amber started to ask for rides, which lines up, I guess, with Amber's story of hustling for auditions back in the day. So they hung out numerous times as a result of this. They also hung out in different settings. They even did shrooms together at a party once. This was almost 15 years ago. It was between about 2008, 2010. Amber would have been in her early 20s. She wasn't famous yet. The last time that they hung out was shortly before Amber got the Guess ad, which is what sort of catapulted her to her first level of any type of fame. So my friend said that Amber was a very self-conscious individual, that she was very beautiful, that she was sometimes funny, but she didn't seem that bright. And as a result of that, I asked my friend, well, do you think that Amber believes her own lies? And she said yes. So I sort of brought up that question in the past video, does Amber to some extent believe her own lies? Not the long tales she makes up, but at least the fact that she is the victim in her relationship, or the relationship that she had in the past with Johnny. And I said I leaned on the side of thinking that was the case, that at the very least she did believe that she was actually Johnny's victim. Now, what we need to think about is that when people truly believe they are the victim, they often, not everyone, but they often will feel that they are entitled to make up lies to get people to believe that they are the victim. And I think this is likely, potentially what happened in Amber's case, just putting it out there. So you can make up your own mind, but hopefully that gives us some more insight into Amber as a human being. And my other thought on it is that, people change as they become famous. So someone who is in a relationship with someone where the other person has the power, my friend is older than Amber. She was giving her rides to auditions. It makes sense that Amber's going to be nice to this individual. But then as she, got some fame, the power balance was flipped. Maybe that's when the abuse started, Definitely someone who is manipulative, who is narcissistic, maybe a sociopath, is going to know when they need to play the game to get what they want. So another thing that came up about my last video that I wanted to address was my comments on the juror. So essentially, I played a news clip of what the juror had said, the one that came forth and spoke to the media. And it included a part where they said, that they felt that Johnny and Amber had a mutually abusive relationship. And of course, I said I disagreed with that. Well, some people in the comments pointed out something to me. They pointed out that the interview that I watched was a bit distorted from the article that actually came out about what the juror said. So I'm going to put a clip from that article here on the screen, and feel free to pause if you want to read it. But essentially, this states that, maybe the jury concluded that Amber and Johnny were mutually abusive to each other. I don't know if they're, stating that as a result of letting Amber win one charge and Johnny win another. I'm not totally sure where this is coming from, but it seems that, when you look at what the juror said, he is actually stating here, that he thinks that Amber was the main aggressor in the relationship. So it does seem like that quote about, the juror saying they were both abusive to each other was certainly taken out of context if you look at the full, dialogue of what he said. So when I found out that I had not seen the full interview with Amber as we know it, I went on a hunt for how could I find all of the audio or the video that was cut out. And I found this great link on Reddit where someone worked incredibly hard to outline all of that for us. And I have not actually read it. What I'm going to try to do is read the excerpts now and then give you my live reaction to it. And I will include the link to Reddit down below. So feel free to click and, read along or read at a different time if that's something you're interested in. So the first is a line in a response to questioning from Savannah, where Savannah says, "Did you worry? Gosh, I'd love to be a person weighing in on all these cultural issues, but that's going to stir this up again." And part of Amber's reply that was cut out is where she says, "I obviously knew it was important for me to not make it about him or to do anything like defame him. I had lawyers, teams of lawyers review all the drafts of this." For some reason, I'm not really sure you did. Because look at, what happened now as a result of that. You lost a really public defamation case. And I mean, if you did have lawyers advise you to go ahead and release that article, maybe they weren't the brightest bulbs in the bunch, which unfortunately would line up to the lawyers that represented you in this case. Then Savannah goes on to ask, "Do you feel like you could be sued again by him for defamation?" And the part of Amber's response that was cut out is she says, "I'm scared that no matter what I do, no matter what I say or how I say it, every step that I take will present another opportunity for this sort of silencing." Okay, silencing. Silencing of your lies, perhaps? The next question from Savannah, she states, "The Depp team argued that you were the abuser, that you instigated physical violence. Did you?" Amber, the part of her response that was cut out, she states, "When you're living in violence and it becomes normal, as I have testified, you have to adapt." So they cut out a line where she's essentially admitting to, being abusive, but saying that it was like responsive abuse or something. Okay, moving on. So Savannah then asks, "What about the witnesses who have said they have seen you instigate physical violence?" Amber's response, "I have seen firsthand how people will file rank and support the person they depend on." Okay, so more excuses. I guess they just cut it out because it didn't really paint her in a good light. Okay, so in Savannah's next question, they actually cut out part of her question, which is, "You say that you were responding, but there is evidence." And then she goes on to state, "There are tapes in which you acknowledge hitting. There are tapes in which you say I started the fight." So they cut out Savannah saying there is evidence. And then the part of Amber's response that was cut out, she states, "They were first leaked online after being edited." I mean, your guess is as good as mine. I think they're just taking out essentially anything that could put her into neutral to poor light. So then in Savannah's next line of questioning, the part of her questioning that got cut out was where Savannah states, "You say, I can't promise I won't get physical again. I mean, this is black and white. I understand context, but you're testifying and you were just telling me today I never started a physical fight, and here you are on tape stating you did." So not all of that got cut out, but the first part where she says, "I promise you," she's quoting Amber, "I promise you I won't get physical again. I mean, this is in black and white. I understand context, but you're testifying." So it's pretty damning that, the stuff that Savannah's saying. She's essentially hitting her hard with the law, what the court stated, and they're cutting it out from the final, interview that we saw. So most of Amber's response they left in, but they took out this one part where she's essentially referencing that when you are in an abusive dynamic, psychologically, emotionally, and physically, you don't have and this is where they start to cut it out, the resources that say you or I do. So she's saying that Savannah has the same resources as her. Obviously, that's not going to, resonate with a lot of people, so they cut it out. Once again, making Amber look better. Okay, so Savannah's next line of questioning that was cut out, and Amber's response was all cut out. I will read it to you now. Savannah states, "But then there are other times. There's another tape where you're taunting him and saying, 'Oh, tell the world, Johnny Depp, I, a man, am a victim of domestic violence.'" Amber's response is then cut out where she states, 20-second clips or the transcripts of them are not representative of even the 2 or the 3 hours that those clips are excerpted from." Okay, just because you say some messed up stuff over the course of a few hours doesn't mean that it simply doesn't count. Moving on, Savannah. She states, and this is once again a cutout question and a cutout reply. Savannah states, "Could your side have just put the whole 3 hours in then?" And then Amber states, "I'm not a lawyer. As I testified to, I was talking in those recordings as a person in an extreme amount of emotional, psychological, and physical distress." Excuses, excuses, excuses. Then they cut out a part about Amber stating that she will stand by every word of her testimony. So then they cut out Amber referencing the UK trial. A line where she states, "It had even more evidence in. In fact, my evidence was largely kept out. Really important pieces of evidence kept out, done differently." So essentially, this is her stating that the whole reason she lost is because the great pieces of evidence that were in the UK trial were not in the US trial. So then Savannah, her questioning and Amber's response is cut out. And here's the question, here's the response. Savannah says, "Some evidence that is admissible in a UK court is not admissible in a US court. Do you think that maybe he had better lawyers?" Amber's reply, "His lawyers certainly did a better job of distracting the jury from the real issues." So there you go. So then they cut out Savannah's question and Amber's response after Amber brings up that, essentially the trial was terrible for her because she was in a room full of Jack Sparrow fans. So Savannah says, "Can you put into words how that felt?" And then Amber says, "This was the most humiliating and horrible thing that I have been through. I have never felt more removed from my own humanity. I felt less than human." I thought the worst thing you went through was being abused by Johnny? Not the trial? Okay. So then in Savannah's next line of questioning, they took about half of this out. So I'll read the whole thing. Essentially, Savannah says, "You had promised to donate $7 million of your divorce settlement to charity." That part was taken out. Then she says, "It was revealed at the trial that you haven't done so yet." That part was kept in. Then Savannah says, "However, they played a tape where you stayed on air that you donated it." This was removed. But the next part was kept in. Do you think that raised questions as to your credibility with the jury? So, once again, they are pulling out something that puts Amber in a bad light. Then they took out some more references to the donation money that was putting Amber in a bad light, because this seems to all be to make her look better during the actual interview that they aired for whatever reason. So another line of Savannah's that they took out is where she states, "Their job," referencing the jury, "is to look at the facts and the evidence, and they did not believe your testimony or your evidence." Do I have to repeat it again? They keep removing things that make Amber look bad. So the next thing that was removed is Amber essentially states, as part of a rambling answer, some things that make her look in a bad light. So I will just be stating the part that was cut out. So Amber states, I freely and openly and voluntarily talked about what I did. I talked about the horrible language. I talked about being pushed to the extent where I didn't know the difference between, right and wrong. I will always continue to feel like I was a part of this, like I was the other half of this relationship because I was. And it was ugly and it could be very beautiful. It was very, very toxic. We were awful to each other. I made a lot of mistakes, but I've always told the truth. Once again, same deal. So then the next and last parts they took out is Amber essentially saying she didn't cooperate with the police. Okay. So once again, admitting to doing something wrong, and then denying that she has any knowledge of TMZ. So these are all things that could make Amber look very, very bad. If you want to see exact details, because it is hard for me to represent all this perfectly, feel free to go to the Reddit link down below. But my thoughts are, why would Dateline include this in their previews, but then not include it in the actual interview? And I read something online as a theory that I actually agree with. And someone stated, they know that most of the world is pro Johnny. And by putting these clips of things that made Amber look negative, it's the truth, but it makes her look negative, they enticed Johnny's fans, which is most of the world, at least the people on his side, right, to tune in for the Dateline interview. But like most of the media, the narrative they want to push is still to make Amber look as innocent as possible and Johnny look as guilty as possible. So ultimately, this isn't any different than anything else that's been going on since the trial began and ended. The media still has a narrative that it wants us to accept. So some other news that's happened since my last video. Amber tried to get the entire verdict thrown out, stating that Juror 15 was not the juror on the initial list. She alleged that while they had the same last name and same address, they had different birth years. The judge denied this motion. The juror summons that was sent to juror number 15, it did not include a birthday, and both the juror and his father have the same full name and the same address. So they never misrepresented themselves. And Amber's team had access to this information the whole time. They could have asked for, this juror to be flipped for a different juror, which they never did. So this is just more evidence that she's really desperate, grasping for straws however she can. In other news, Amber's insurance team is refusing to pay the judgment that was made as part of the verdict. Their reasoning was that the jury found the defamation Amber committed to be malicious, and they are not on the hook for any willful misconduct. And one last thing I want to address. A lot of the pro-Amber crowd brought up during the trial, how Johnny Depp has another lawsuit regarding alleged violence. So let's touch on that. Essentially, this is the Rocky Brooks versus Johnny Depp case. So on July 2018, Greg Rocky Brooks filed a lawsuit against Johnny Depp, claiming that Johnny had punched him in the face on the set of City of Lies. So how it went down, during his deposition, Rocky contradicted himself. Rocky had no witnesses or evidence for this. There was a script supervisor on set who essentially came out and defended Johnny Depp. So none of this worked out in Rocky's favor, and the case has been settled. It doesn't look like it really came to anything. It certainly didn't prove that Johnny Depp is someone who has a history of violence. So that's all I really have to update in the Amber vs. Johnny case. Hopefully you enjoy this. I have continued to make videos due to the really positive feedback I've gotten on here. Of course, there's some negative feedback, but I can ignore that. So if you enjoyed this video, please like it if you haven't done so already. And just a reminder to subscribe and turn on notifications if you like this video and would like to see more like this. So until next time.